So, you want to buy a professional sports team, or at the very least, you want to know what billionaires actually get for 9, 10, sometimes $13 billion. First of all, the team itself usually loses money. The Dallas Cowboys, the most valuable sports franchise on earth, are also the most profitable team in sports, generating an estimated $629 million in operating income last season. That sounds like proof the model works. It is also the exception. Among the 185 men's teams Forbes valued in 2025, an estimated 37 failed to reach break-even, including 16 MLS clubs and 11 MLB teams. The New York Mets alone lost an estimated $268 million in 2024, largely due to luxury tax penalties. So why do billionaires keep paying record prices for assets that, by the league's own numbers, frequently lose money on operations? What is the team actually for? Why does the IRS treat a sports franchise differently than almost any other business in America? And why do the owners who get the richest are so often the ones who care the least about winning? In 2023, a group led by Josh Harris paid $6.05 billion for the Washington Commanders. It was the highest price ever paid for a North American sports franchise at the time. Break that number down. The team's on-field product, the actual football operation, generated revenue in the low hundreds of millions a year. The $6.05 billion price tag wasn't a multiple of football profit. It was a bet on three other things entirely: the value of the broadcast rights attached to the team, the real estate the team controls or could control, and the franchise's right to a future stadium deal in a market with no current stadium. Compare that to buying an actual football operating company with no league affiliation. There is no such market because the number doesn't exist without the league attached to it. The Commanders weren't being sold as a football team. They were being sold as a permanent, exclusive seat at a table that distributes roughly $10 billion a year in national broadcasting revenue across all 32 NFL franchises, regardless of how any one team performs. So what was the $6.05 billion actually for? Not for the players. Players are leased, not owned. They age out, get traded, get hurt, and depreciate as assets within a year or two. Not for the stadium, which Washington didn't even have secured at the time of sale. Not for the win column. The Commanders had one playoff appearance in the prior 6 seasons. The answer becomes visible if you look at one mechanism buried in the U.S. tax code. Since 2004, owners have been allowed to treat a large share of a franchise's purchase price as an amortizable, depreciating asset. Over 15 years, the same tax treatment normally reserved for things like factory equipment that wears out. A football team, unlike a tractor, does not actually wear out, it appreciates. But on paper, for tax purposes, it is allowed to act as if it is decaying in value every single year, generating a paper loss an owner can use to offset other income, while the real-world value of the asset climbs into the billions. Statistically, an NFL franchise can lose money and make its owner richer in the same calendar year. This is what franchise ownership actually buys. It buys a depreciation schedule. It buys a fixed contractual cut of a national media contract that grows regardless of attendance. It buys the right to build the real estate around a stadium parking, retail, hotels, mixed-use development, and capture that revenue exclusively, the way the Atlanta Braves did when they built the Battery, an entertainment district around their stadium that now generates revenue independent of a single pitch being thrown. Win column, optional. Depreciation schedule, media check, real estate footprint, guaranteed. Now, look at what happens when two owners take that same asset and do completely different things with it. The Mara and Tisch families have owned the New York Giants for a combined total of more than a century between them, treating the team as a civic institution first and a financial instrument second, a franchise now valued at $7.3 billion, generating an estimated $190 million in annual profit, run by the same families who owned it in the era when the league still split gate receipts by hand. Contrast that with the wave of ownership entities now buying into sports purely as a financial instrument. Private equity firms like Arctos Partners and Redbird Capital don't want a box at the stadium. They want a passive minority stake, structured like any other portfolio holding, designed to be resold in 5 to 7 years at a markup, betting on the asset class itself rather than on any single team's identity. One model treats the team like a family heirloom that happens to throw off cash. The other treats it like a position in a fund. What the Mara family built over a century, a private equity fund can now buy a slice of in a single afternoon. But this asset class has a structural weakness, and it shows up in two distinct ways. The first is internal collapse. One owner, one bad decision, can destroy the brand value the league spent decades building. In April 2014, a recording surfaced of Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling making racist remarks to his girlfriend. Within days, the NBA banned him for life and forced a sale. Sterling had bought the Clippers in 1981 for $12.5 million. The forced sale closed months later at $2 billion to Steve Ballmer, a staggering return on paper. But Sterling didn't choose the timing, didn't control the buyer, and was removed from an asset the league itself had spent 30 years building value into. When your product depends on a league-wide media contract and a shared brand, your biggest threat is never a rival owner. It is your own conduct becoming the headline. The second weakness is the external ceiling, a point where political or institutional pressure caps what an owner can do, no matter how much money is on the table. In 2022 and 2023, Commanders owner Daniel Snyder faced a congressional investigation, a league-commissioned probe into workplace misconduct, and mounting pressure from fellow owners who voted, in effect, to force him out. Snyder didn't lose the team to bankruptcy. He lost it to his peers, who control the only door he could sell. Through any sale of an NFL franchise requires approval from 3/4 of the other owners. He sold for a record $6.05 billion, the highest price ever paid for the team, and still, the exit wasn't his choice. In this business, you can build the most valuable version of the asset in the league's history and still not be the one who decides when you leave it. Zoom out, and the macro picture explains why billionaires and private equity funds are circling this asset class specifically. In 2023, the world's 50 most valuable sports teams were collectively worth $256 billion. By the end of 2025, that figure had grown to more than $353 billion, up 22% in a single year and more than double what it was 4 years earlier. No other major asset class, not real estate, not most public equities, has compounded at that rate with that little correlation to the broader economy. Part of the reason is structural scarcity. There are only 32 NFL franchises, 30 NBA franchises, and they essentially never go up for sale in large numbers. Part of it is the media rights flywheel. The NFL's $113 billion media rights agreement running through 2033 lifted valuations across the entire league at once, and the NBA's new 11-year, $76 billion media package with ESPN, NBC, and Amazon is doing the same thing to basketball valuations right now. The real reason this asset class has become irresistible to billionaires and private equity funds is simple. It is one of the only ways to own a legally protected monopoly, with guaranteed broadcast income and depreciation tax benefits, that also functions as the single best trophy a wealthy person can put their name on. Look at where the numbers sit today. The Dallas Cowboys are valued at $13 billion. The Los Angeles Lakers sit at roughly $10 billion. The Los Angeles Clippers, The same team Donald Sterling sold under league pressure for $2 billion in 2014 are now valued at $7.5 billion. Real Madrid remains the only soccer club inside the global top 20 at $6.75 billion, a sign of just how far ahead American franchise economics have pulled relative to the rest of the world's sports markets. Together, the 50 most valuable teams on the planet are now worth more than $353 billion. Media contracts are renegotiated upward roughly every decade. Every time one resets, every franchise attached to it resets with it, whether the team wins a single game or not. A footnote worth adding, since this script deals in real corporate and tax structures rather than weapons or violence, nothing above constitutes financial or tax advice, and franchise depreciation rules, league approval processes, and valuation figures shift year to year, treat the specific numbers as a snapshot of where things stood through early 2026. The strongest re-hook moments for retention are, first, the depreciation schedule reveal around the 2-minute mark, because it converts an abstract tax rule into a concrete, the team can lose money and make the owner richer, payoff that resolves the cold open hook. Second, the Sterling forced sale story, because it's a self-contained narrative with a clean before-after dollar figure, $12.5 million to $2 billion, that rewards viewers who stuck around for a story rather than another statistic. And third, the final macro zoom stat stack, the $353 billion combined valuation alongside the Cowboys, Lakers, Clippers comparison, because it lands the episode on the single biggest, most quotable number right before the video ends with no off-ramp or call to action.